6th, 2023, opening at 7 p.m. Welcome to all of those who are present here tonight in the Council Chamber and those who are watching from home. Before we commence, please turn off your mobile phones or place them on silent if you have not already done so, as they're not to be used during Council meetings. Please stand and remain silent during the acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the original custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to all those who have sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. We also consider in our thoughts all those who today are being affected by war around the globe, and especially those in Ukraine. Finally, we seek guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in, or visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. You may come in. There's seats inside. You will need to use your microphones to register your intent to enter the debate and wait until I've asked you to speak. Please turn off your microphone when you have finished speaking. Please be respectful and patient while listening to each speaker and do not interrupt or interject during the debate. Each person has 3 minutes with a warning bell at 2. Now to the agenda. It is a very long agenda with 6 deputations and some items that we must deal with tonight. I ask you to consider how we manage the agenda items after we have completed these deputations and the reports have been withdrawn. If you wish to withdraw an item for debate, please indicate this quickly, otherwise I will seek a mover and a seconder immediately. We have 2 apologies this evening, one from Councillor Harvey and one from Councillor Zing, and an indication from Councillor Wilkins that she will be arriving late this evening. Is there anyone who wishes to make a declaration of interest later on in the meeting? If not, then you have, of course, yes.
Madam Mayor, I just need to declare a conflict of interest in the CEO's performance review item.
Of course. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. I seek a mover. Councillor Turnbull, you wish to move the minutes? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cornish. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We have no adjourned business. We have no public question time, but we do have a series of deputations. No presentations, we have a series of deputations. And the first one comes from Mr. William Cheeseman. Would you like to come forward, Mr. Cheeseman, and just state your name and the suburb you live in? And then you'll be right to go. Thank you for coming.
My name is William Cheeseman.
Yeah, just have a seat, yeah.
Is that working? Yeah. Thank you for having me this evening. I live in Tusmore near the park with my partner Laura and our 10-year-old twins, and we've been living there for about 8 years, and we understand that the park attracts a variety of people and activities, and we tolerate and accept this in our daily lives. I'm here this evening to discuss the northeast corner of the park. This area is a well-loved wild corner and it offers a valuable chance of connection with nature via the creek, the trees and a rare patch of ungroomed lawn. It represents a very small proportion of the park whilst providing high value experientially. We often spend time there playing in the creek, meeting other children and parents. The area has stayed in a very similar state for the 8 years that we have been here, and it is a valuable asset to the park. If it has continued to be restricted, as we have seen in the last week, it will no longer be valuable. or as valuable, sorry. Careful management of this area is needed as we see fewer children playing outside in our society. Any restriction and control over public space will only deter engagement and reduce accessibility to outside activity. And surely we must value and support outdoor activity, as child screen use is at an all-time high, and we're now seeing the impacts on mental health and social well-being. As a family, our ongoing connection and love of the park and its community demonstrate our stewardship of the common area. And I say stewardship because we are not seeking ownership or control. We care for the creek, we collect rubbish along it, we rescue injured ducks, and we're invested in the local environment and the local community. And we often converse with other park users to check in, make sure everyone's feeling safe in the public area. I have a number of questions. Can I ask questions in a deputation, or would you prefer not?
Not really.
I won't. I'll leave them there.
Yeah, I mean, if you could turn them into a statement, might be better.
I won't.
Or what you're concerned about considering.
I'll send you an email. Thank you.
Thank you. If you just remain there in case there are some questions, and I'm sure there'll be someone who would like to thank you as well for coming in. So, first one is Councillor Dawes.
Mr. Cheeseman,
Good evening.
you talked about the park being restricted now. Can you just go through some of those restrictions which you don't like?
One of them I won't mention, and the other one is some bollards that have been put in, and I can't get my bike through. So it's a physical barrier. The other one is a social restriction that I won't go into.
Right, Councillor Henschke.
Good evening, and thank you both for attending this evening, and I just wish to thank you for your participation in local affairs. My question around that would be, will you continue to participate in looking after the park and your stewardship despite everything, and hopefully we can come to a peaceful resolution.
Certainly, and I was there just prior to the meeting. And there's some sort of division at the moment in the community, so we're on the sort of trying to repair that, and maybe council can help.
Thank you for those remarks.
Councillor Jones.
Can I ask you what questions you wanted to ask?
You're leading the witness. There's a few of us that would like more information about why the council has responded in the way they have. I haven't seen any community consultation, and I have a number of contacts in the community, and so that's really baffling. And then I read the agenda, and I have a number of issues with the agenda for tonight's meeting relating to that area. So that's a whole myriad of questions I would ask, but I'm not going to go into that. Has council undertaken a biodiversity study of the area? Does anyone want to answer that?
CEO will respond to some of those questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually think I need to take some responsibility for the actions that happened out there. And I guess I'd like to provide an apology to the deputies this evening from the community, and also particularly to the two ward councillors. I acted in haste to try and provide a resolution to a situation that had built up. But in that haste, I forgot two things. One was to find out what the broader community thought, and the second was to take the time to talk to the ward councillors. That was my mistake, and I'm happy to, I'll apologise for that, and mention that it won't happen again, and with the guidance of council, whatever that outcome might be, I'm happy to work through resolving the situation, taking on board all aspects of the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your apology.
Councillor Davey, you have a question?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming along tonight. I think we spoke on the phone. And I appreciate your input. I think it's divine that the kids can still sit in the creek and play like we used to when we were little, and there's that little beach area there. It is, as the CEO has alluded, it's a very difficult area to balance because there's so many competing interests. I just wondered if you'd read our biodiversity policy and read what we're trying to do in terms of our commitment to biodiversity and that site. And I also wanted to point out too that there is a bike lane right the way through from Stannington Street through to right up into Tusmore, where bike riders will commute. It's designed for them to commute. Is that the area that you're concerned you can't access?
No. And I haven't read the study. I'm very time poor. Would you like to tell me about it?
I will when I talk later to the motion on notice. I'll provide more information. But the biodiversity policy, which governs how we manage our biodiversity sites, is one of our council policies. I think it's 2 years old, and yeah, it's our responsibility to maintain it. So we've got all those competing interests that we need to balance.
I understand. Has there been a
So
study?
it's worth a read.
Has there been a study of the site?
Through Madam Mayor, as part of my personal inspections, my high-level view was that there wasn't any material damage that I could see to the site. There was a couple of minor areas, I think, but broadly, I don't think it's been impacted. I think we're a bit on the same page here. It's just about finding a workable solution going forward about the use of that area. But my team will probably do some work to enhance the biodiversity areas. But as I say, from my perspective, there wasn't high levels of damage. There was just some minor areas.
Thank you. I was surprised to read the word vandalism in the agenda tonight when your response then doesn't indicate vandalism.
Can I thank you very much for coming in tonight and sharing your views?
Thank you, Mayor.
And I will now call upon Mr. Lindsay Cope to speak on the same matter. And again, Mr. Cope, yes, please take a seat and then just your name and suburb. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me talk about this. I'm Lindsay Cope and we live in Heathpool. So we live within a couple of 100 yards of the area that is in dispute. I have lived and played in the area. I'm 75. 70 years we've had interaction in that park. Our kids have had it, and my grandchildren also play in that park and Hazelwood Park as well. We love the park. We also do particularly love the freedom of the park in that particular area. There is certainly a bit of biodiversity there, but as the CEO said, I've walked through there 3 or 4 times this week, and I can see, there might be the odd small brush that's been trodden on, but whether that's bikes or whatever it is, I don't know. The paths that are there have been paths for bikes and kids and walkers for 50 odd years or more. I see absolutely no damage done by the bike riders. I think there's been a little bit of personal problems there, and kids do sometimes react when people challenge them or more. The kids I've found have been absolutely fantastic, and I've pulled a couple of them up a couple of weeks ago over having a bit of a fight. They ended up being 2 brothers, and brothers do fight. And the mother came along and thanked me for pulling them up. But we love that park. We don't want it to change. We don't see any need for it to change. And that's really where we're at. We love it as it is. We've used it for generations, and I'm sure my grandchildren will also continue to use it. I think, you know, the mention was of vandalism. Well, the only vandalism I can see there has been the chopping down of the rope swing. And I don't know whether council did that or whether it was a person who's not in council who did it. But that rope swing has been used right through winter by little children, big children, and even bigger children. The adults love it just as much as the kids. And it had a very safe handle on it. And I think the first thing that needs to be done is for that rope swing to be put back in place and the bollards to be removed. I think it needs to go back as it was.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Councillor Cornish.
Just wanted to thank you very much for coming in and giving maybe a bit of a priority order of what we can do immediately to remediate the situation. So thank you for identifying those, and thank you for speaking.
Yep. Thanks very much.
There doesn't seem to be anyone else asking any questions, so thank you very much for coming in.
I've never done this before, and yeah, it is important to us. So.
Yeah, it's very good to hear other people's perspectives. Well done. Thank you. And the next deputy is Anna Dawson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Chris. And thanks for apologising and owning the situation. I think that's really important as well. So my name's Anna Dawson. I live also in Tusmore, just across the road from the Lions Bookmart, so very close to the park. So we get to see people who frequent the park, and we've got, you know, direct line of vision over to the rope swing and the area that's contested. I've got 3 boys, 16, 10 and 8, all who love their time in the park, none of whom actually ride bikes in that contested area. So I feel like I'm speaking to you as a mother, as a parent, but not with any particular conflict of interest. I believe that children crave opportunity to spend time in nature, to explore and interact with their environment. And the wild corner that we're talking about tonight is exactly the kind of place that they look for, and I think it's a treasure that Burnside Council has this opportunity available for kids in the area. I note that Burnside has, within the strategic plan, a vision for it being a healthy, safe, a city with a healthy, safe and connected and active community, and also mention of people and nature living in harmony. The kids in this particular region of the park might move dirt occasionally and build a jump or two, but they're not vandals. They're predominantly kids between 10 and 16, or older kids or adults who might jump on a rope swing occasionally. But I believe that the activities of these young kids in coming together with collective agency should be viewed really positively by this council, and not problematised by anyone who's forgetting the importance of play in healthy development. A resident of Tusmore recently sent me an article in the Advertiser, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about the childhood experiences of boomers who got to live outside in nature, to roam free. And we are simply asking that this wild area of Tusmore Park remain a sanctuary for people of all ages, but with this little corner of the park left for these kids to connect with one another in nature in a wild space. We know that mental health in kids is threatened like never before. A recent survey of teachers commissioned by Beyond Blue found that 84% of them viewed mental health concerns as the greatest risk facing young people, followed by excessive screen time. And we know that this corner of the park provides an antidote to both of those things. I was absolutely shocked to see the bollards constructed, and I believe these bollards, with intention to prevent cyclists moving through the area, to be a violation of the freedoms of the local community. I also believe the bollards are likely to incite criminal activity from young people, nature-loving kids who've never done anything like this before, but who will be infuriated that this has happened and will be enticed to do something that they shouldn't do. I wrote to you, Mayor, a number of councillors and the CEO prior to construction of these bollards last Wednesday. The construction began on Thursday, yet my concerns were left unheeded and construction proceeded. I'm a true believer in the importance of shared spaces, and I believe we can arrive at a win-win where the biodiversity is protected, even fostered, and where children can continue to enjoy connecting in Tusmore Park. So in summary, I really hope that this council isn't the first council in generations upon generations to limit or prohibit the activity of young people. I call for immediate removal of the bollards and to this win-win. We can get a biodiversity assessment done. I'm happy to help plant trees in the area, do whatever I can to ensure that nature is protected and yet fun-loving kids get to have fun in Tusmore Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dawes.
You have a similar name to me. You're
Close.
Dawes and I'm Dawes.
Yeah.
We've obviously received a number of emails from a concerned resident on the other side, if I can say. And we've found a shovel hidden in the grass and so forth. I'm not too sure if you were saying let them continue to play, and if they do a mound, well, ask the staff of the council to repair it, or I'm not sure what you were saying. Can you just explain further about it's a sanctuary and so forth, but are there limits to what the kids can do?
Look, in my view, if the kids come with a shovel, I'll give an example of a story. A friend of mine lost her husband to kidney cancer 3 years ago, and her 11-year-old son was grossly depressed, just lost his dad, had refused to play any competitive sport, dropped out of football, refused to go to school. She could not get this kid to school. It was just absolute crisis. She couldn't get him out of the house. All he wanted to do was sit on his Xbox 24/7. A friend of his lives adjacent to Tusmore Park, and had asked him repeatedly, come and hang out, come and hang out. He said, we're going to go to that corner, we're going to take the bikes, we'll build a few jumps. And so Zay was like, oh, okay, well maybe. So you've got a kid who's otherwise totally disengaged, who's excited by the idea of getting a shovel, building a little dirt jump and riding his bike over it. Now, in my view, that is gorgeous. If they take a shovel and just make their own little pile of dirt to ride a bike over it, let them be. There's nothing wrong with that. The dirt, where they build jumps, there is no biodiversity adjacent. It is a plain dirt path, and they just mound a bit of dirt, squash it down and ride their bike over it. I personally have zero issue with that, and I would like to find anyone. We should all come together in the park and see where it happens. There's nothing right near that they're damaging except a few grasses, not natives, just rude, everyday grasses that you would rip out of your garden. I'd be very happy to have a chat with you on site and to have a look at the area. I think if they've got shovels, great. Let them do something useful together and have fun and connect. It's really important for kids to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to ask a question? Councillor David.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for coming along tonight. I just wondered if you're aware that there are BMX tracks and bike trail tracks. There's one about 2 kilometres away from Tusmore Park in the West Parklands, the city parklands. There's trails right through the hills. There's activity sites where kids on their bikes can go and, jump over mounds and all of that sort of thing, all around our suburbs. And I just wondered if you want to recognise the difference between a biodiversity site and an ordinary park, and whether you're aware of what we're trying to do in Burnside about biodiversity and what our policy is, which means that our residents, much as we'd all love everybody to be able to just go and dig and play in areas, there are restricted areas, and necessarily we have to have that to maintain these sites in Burnside, which is remnant vegetation.
So this area has never been prohibited to children activity before. So unless this is a new biodiversity site, has this happened just recently? Because I've also lived adjacent to the park for 8 years, and until very recently there was no prohibition of play in that area. I would like there to be... Yep. Look, I would suggest... Yeah, okay. Well, I've been close witness to that area of the park for 8 years. I've never seen the activity there being prohibited before. I can see that there's a conservation area it's signed as a conservation area north of the area where kids play. And I can see that there's active intention for greater biodiversity there and, so on. That's fine. The place where the kids predominantly play is not a biodiversity site but I'd love to see where the biodiversity is. It is wild grasses. But I think we should hold a public consultation, get on site, have a look, and I'm hoping for a win-win. I'm not saying that kids can rule the roost and do whatever they want. I'm suggesting that we could achieve some protection. I think we should get kids involved in planting trees and knowing what's there and honouring and respecting that. Put signage up. This is a native grass. This is important because let's increase the value of that biodiversity site, using it as an education opportunity for kids to learn about that corner of the park and to become very aware of where they can and can't go. I'm happy to have my number if kids are ever doing the wrong thing. I can have my number there. I'll go and talk to them and say, you can't go, that's not for you, this is for you. We can manage it respectfully, in my view.
Councillor Hedgeby.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Anna. And you sound like a resident that, again, wants to participate in local affairs, which is fabulous. And we've started, as a council, what they call co-design workshops. So in our ward, in Rose Park, in the ward, same ward, where there was a co-design workshop on site in a little pocket park. And the residents came out and I was wondering if that would be something you'd be interested in participating in, if that's the direction we go to next.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure we could get many others involved. I think we should get the kids involved.
Yeah.
The kid in question that I've been been speaking about. Get kids like him down there to say, well, what are your needs? What would you like to be able to do here? And we'll get a win-win for everyone. I'm concerned that the person who initially raised his concerns for biodiversity, I think it's fantastic that he wants to protect that area. Let's work together. Let's get him and the kids there on site with a really good facilitator going, what are your needs and interests and priorities? What are your needs and interests and priorities? And let's come together and work it out.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much for coming in. We have now to hear from Mr. Pagliaro. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for having us all tonight. I came here with quite a heavy heart, to be honest. This issue has sprung from seemingly nowhere and has very quickly divided many members of the community and really upset some of the people that are involved, both sides of the fence, so to speak. I came here with this heavy heart, but I'm very grateful for your apology, which is very much appreciated. I'm sure we all appreciate that. The bollards certainly did flick my switch. I found it very upsetting. As I did the motion with such strong words as antisocial, vandalism, destruction, violence, aggressive behaviour, extensive damage. I mean, these are big words, These are big words. So my name's Richard Pagliaro, and I forgot to say this. I live in Heathpool, directly opposite the park, top of Stannington Avenue. I lived there for 28 years. As a 10-year-old, I played in the park. My children played in the park. I hope my grandchildren play in the park, and I hope my great-great-great-grandchildren play in the park, which is why I'm here tonight, because I had a great sense that the way this was going was in the wrong direction. and like Lindsay and like the others, I'm in the park all the time. I walk the dog, I walk through this area, I've now much more walk through this area. I don't usually walk through this area. There's too many kids on bikes running around, and there's surly teenagers, as teenagers are likely to be, sitting in corners, and I go in there through there and I think, not my space, you know. My space is in the park, the oval. My space is on the other side, where I meet with the three people behind and many other people of the community. We meet almost every night with our dogs, and we talk and chat and blah, 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 and we come together. And on the other side of the park, the kids go backwards and forwards on their bikes. And like Lindsay, I've looked for the damage, and I've looked for the vandalism, and I've looked at this so-called jump. Now, this jump is the exit of the water that was built in 2005 when the park actually floods and the water has to dump into the creek. So this dump was made as a design feature for flood mitigation. And if I was a 10-year-old, I would look at this. It's actually 6 metres wide. It's 500 mil deep. It's got a lovely shape to it. Absolutely perfect for a kid on a bike. Absolutely perfect. And yes, some of the children actually do they'll grab a log, they'll put it on one end, you know, they'll put it together with some rocks and put some dirt over there and try and get as high as they can, you know, which is exactly probably what I would do and many of us would have done when we were 10 or 11. Maybe that's an issue, to take your point, that we really should address, and maybe that's a hazard that should be avoided, and maybe we talk to the kids. But, so much has been said. I think my people here have said everything that needs to be said. I would like to add that, to take your point, I'd be very willing to join a group, that's a co-design group that sits down with children, with ourselves, with anyone that's interested, and come up with a plan that satisfies all needs. There is a significant resolve with the people who meet with the dogs, and that's a lot of them, and who are aware of this issue. There is a significant resolve to try and come up with a plan that solves everyone's problems, and is a decent compromise. And I look forward to being part of that. So, thank you.
Are there any questions? No, Councillor Cornish.
Just wanted to thank you very much for coming in and sharing your stories. I too used to play in the park, and I'd probably move a lot of those boulders to dam the creek, because that's what you did as a 10-year-old, to try and catch the yabbies.
Yeah.
So yes, no, but I'd just like to thank you for coming in and expressing your views.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I look forward to the next meeting on site, hopefully.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pagliaro. And we now move to a different topic, and it is in relation to the speed on Lockwood Road, and that is, I'm sorry, Mr. Limberopoulos, I haven't had a chance to speak to you, but you've probably heard and seen the format that's operated so far. And I think you've done one before, haven't you? Sorry, that's right. I didn't think I recognised your face. So 5 minutes with a warning bell at 4 minutes, and just your name and suburb before you start speaking. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Nathan Limberopoulos from Burnside. Before I get into what I've got in front of me, thanks for having me here today. Thanks for providing a forum like this, and thanks for giving us an area of Adelaide that, in my opinion, is the best part of Adelaide to live in. It's just stunning. Been here since 2016. Lived with my wife, who was gullible enough to marry me, and it's just a great place to be. So thank you. I'm here obviously to represent the signatories of the petition that was in front of you quite some time ago, and our concern with speed on Lockwood Road. I want to thank David Hayes and his group for bringing the qualitative and quantitative insights together to try and give us a complete picture of what's going on Lockwood Road, and thank David Hayes and his group for providing me with the data for me to actually have a look at it and do my own analysis. The bit for me that's a bit concerning, and for the signatories, is the way in which the data has been assessed and put in front of you. Percentages are a great thing, but when you're talking about 2,000 cars that use Lockwood Road and the nature of Lockwood Road, and you then translate that percentage into numbers, the numbers are quite high. From my analysis of looking at the data, 23% of vehicles on weekdays were exceeding the speed limit. The top speed was 87 kilometres an hour. This is in daytime. And 4 cars between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 a.m, when kids are going to school, were travelling in speeds up to 80 kilometres an hour. So they were between 60 and 80 kilometres an hour. So it was 5 cars. 22% of cars on a Sunday were above the speed limit, with multiple instances of cars nearing speeds of 80 kilometres an hour during mass. So this is between 10 and 12 in the morning. 10 a.m. and 12 a.m. in the morning, 12 p.m, noon. That's really, really concerning, because we're talking about opposite sides of the spectrum, from young kids that are 3, 4, 5 years old, right through to your elderly, that are relying on Lockwood Road to cross and to feel safe. I also want to just turn your mind to the report that was put in front of you with respect to the car accidents that have been recorded. Of the car accidents that are described in the report, 2 of the accidents have been captured by CCTV, by my neighbours, and we confirmed that it was speed that actually generated those accidents, not inattention, because we've got cars before the accident and after, and you can see a considerable shift in the how quick the cars were going by. An additional car accident which wasn't reported in the report that's in front of you took place earlier this year that resulted in a car being ridden off. Now, we know this because the victim of the car accident lives on Lockwood Road and they're a neighbour of ours. So while I'm raising these particular points, we don't feel that council administration have necessarily communicated the findings in a manner that actually gives us a real feel for what we're dealing with here. Whilst I'm really grateful for the significant amount of work that's gone into it, sometimes just applying, status, what I want to refer to as your standard process, doesn't always give you the complete picture. It does require sometimes to go a level deeper into the data to actually see what's really going on. We're also concerned with the recommendations that are being put forward. And when I refer to the recommendations, not the private company, the ones that council administration have put forward as this will fix the problem. Recommending to engage SAPOL, extend school zones and install curb ramps. Respectfully, I'm quite perplexed at how that's going to address speed. SAPOL have been engaged for the last 5 years, as far as I'm aware, and we've still got the problem. I'd also like to highlight the following. The excessive speeds are being recorded in the area where we have an ECH, a church, a kindy, and a primary school. The fact that council in section 26 of the report has indicated that, I quote, says, the data record is not considered concerning, is really concerning for me. How can we consider speeds nearing 80 kilometres an hour in daylight hours with people crossing the road as not concerning? Foot traffic on Lockwood Road is excessive, and that's appropriate, right? The nature of the street. I walk with my son all the time up and down that street. We just recently had a car that mounted the curb and hit the tree because it was speeding. I don't want to feel unsafe. I've got my 3-year-old son that I'm walking with, and there's other kids there. We do need to do something about this. With the cafe also there, which is a beautiful cafe, and again, grateful to council for permitting for that to be there. What it has done is brought more traffic. But with that, there's a demand for parking. Cars often, I'll be finished in just a sec, cars are over our driveways. We can't see cars that are coming, and when they're speeding and you're reversing, it's really quite concerning. So we beg council to consider the private consultants' recommendations. I think the ones that they put forward, I think is a good way forward. I think it's cost effective, and we're so grateful that that has happened. So thank you.
Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you for coming in, Mr Limberopoulos. You've been very tenacious over this. I can't believe your son's 3 years old. He wasn't even born when we first mentioned all this.
That's right.
Heaven's time's gone quickly, and it's become more of an issue with the traffic there, and I admire your tenacity. My question to you is, what would you like to see happen to make Lockwood Road safer for the residents who live along it? What would you like? if you had, the,
I think in this instance, my personal views are probably, I'd rather have the collective view, and the collective view being the raised blocks. That's what I think the majority that were surveyed had indicated for. With that said though, we also understand there's budget. You've got a number of things that you need to address. So what the private company has put forward, I think is a good way forward. And I think by implementing that and then observing, seeing what the results say, I think that's a good way forward, and we'd be grateful if that would be considered and done.
Councillor Dawes.
Hey Nathan, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I want you, can you just give your experiences of traffic going both ways, north and south? You know, people tend to concentrate on the traffic coming from Greenhill, but what have you and your residents noticed about the traffic coming both ways?
Yeah, look, there's definitely more, the traffic that's coming down from Greenhill Road generally, it's coming at higher speeds because the way the road is structured. The concerning part is particularly where the bridge is and how narrow that strip is. And when you're talking about cars going 60, 70, 80 kilometres where a road is, I don't know how wide it is, 3, 4 metres at best.
Explain where that bridge is for the other councillors. Yeah.
Well, it's in the vicinity that we're talking about. It is very concerning, and it does go both ways. We do see it both ways. I've seen it many, many times, and there's been times at night where you just go, whoa, that was quick. It sounds like Formula One cars. And whilst, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, you go, well, at least we're inside, we're safer, it still shouldn't be happening. It's the daylight hours that we're really concerned about.
Thank you.
Councillor Hench.
Oh, good evening.
Hi.
I've been to that cafe a couple of times, very nice, and the heritage character of the area. The consultant's report referred to something like $45,000, I think, would be needed to pave and create those sort of change the surface of certain intersections.
Yes.
So that when you drive over it, you can kind of make you feel, well, this is a pedestrian zone kind of feel.
Yeah.
The one in particular I thought about was being at that cafe. I kind of did feel maybe a measure like that might be helpful to create that precinct feel, calm down the traffic a little bit. Because the consultant said, we'd have to do 3 of them, but if you just did one there, how do you think that would be helpful?
It's a step in the right direction. Right, so I don't want to say it won't be helpful. Absolutely would be helpful. Mm-hmm. But we're experiencing the issues after that part as well. Part of the checkpoint that was studied was 84 Lockwood Road, which is closer to Young Street, Lockwood Road intersection. And that's quite way down the road. Mm-hmm. So anything you sort of do upstream, you're still going to have the problem downstream. So I do feel that what the private company or private consultant has put forward as the 3 points, they are the 3 points of concern, and I do think that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I don't see any other names on my... Oh, Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. So I popped down there at morning tea time today to have a look, and the SAPOL had pulled somebody over heading south, and the road seemed really calm. And I felt it wasn't really a fair representation, so I went there at school pickup time and noticed there was a lot of people using High Street as a quick way through. But obviously the problem is further down near the bridge or a bit further on near the roundabout.
It's definitely there as well, but we're talking right from Greenhill Road right through to Stattenborough. There's multiple sections where you have these problems and the speed being excessive because there isn't anything to slow them down. After that roundabout where Stattenborough and Lockwood Road is, right through until you get to the cafe, there is nothing to slow anyone down. So foot goes to the pedal and they just hammer it because you get congestion on Glenburn Road. You've got Hallett Road that's now 50 kilometres an hour. So Lockwood Road has copped it. We're now, I think the last study was over 2,000 vehicles are now using it. Now, I do respect council says it's built to take that on, but something's got to give here. And it's the speed, in my opinion. The volumes, I've got to take council's advice on that. But speed, we've got a genuine issue here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Limberopoulos, for coming in and speaking to us. Now we've actually seen each other. So thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Yep. And that's the last. That's the only one on that item, Lockwood Road speed. And the next one is Mr Michael Green in relation to Stobie Pole Art. No, that's his. Yeah.
Right. I'm Michael Green. I'm a resident of Beulah Park. I'm actually on Gers Road. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I need some help in working out who owns the Gers Road Stobie Pole or the art project and how it ends. Now, I've heard people say, oh, it's a SAPOL problem or it's a SAPOL thing, but council's got on their website, there's barcode labels on there. I was told the council were installing the panels and they seem to be maintaining them and gluing them back on when they come off. And when I raised an S270 request, one of the answer that came back was basically nothing was said about SAPOL owning it. So I believe that council do own it. But one of the problems I have is no one's prepared to say how long this project goes for and how we have pieces removed when they're poor quality or have deteriorated. For those not aware of the project, back in January 2022, we had a general letter come out from one of the residents asking us, would we mind hosting a street art project? A number of people responded positively to that, and apparently it did have a bit in there about artwork would come from kindergartens and schools. Council funded the project in June 22, and the first panel went up at the very end of 22. The majority went up in early 23. So I suspect that when council approved the funding, no one actually saw the panels or what they were going to look like finally. I contacted SAPN. They defer to council with these sort of bulk projects, and they don't do their normal in-depth analysis of it. So they didn't see any pictures. They assume that and this is talking to a SAPN person, they assume that council is supervising the project. And as an aside, I'll just note that the panels don't comply with SAPN requirements. So no one seems to be responsible for reviewing the panels. Gers Road has 27 Stobie poles, and half to 3/4 would be suitable for mounting panels on. But for some reason we have 62 panels. So it's massively oversubscribed. I don't know why. Yes. There's some typical artwork, and I divide it into 3 categories. There's some good stuff, some pretty bland, mediocre stuff, and there's some pretty awful stuff. If you look at the handout you were given, that first one's a bad, or I see it as a bad one. Very difficult to see what it is, not a lifelike representation at all. That's one of the mediocre ones. That's another one. The mediocre ones aren't offensive, it's just they don't grab you or anything like that. That one's one of the best ones. There are a few scattered around the place, but that's a wonderful bit, and actually it shows the rest of the street up. And the last one there is another one which I'd rate as pretty awful. You can't really tell what that is and what it's meant to be. Now, apparently council specified the type of panel to be used, but already, and this is what, 9 months afterwards, some of them are already showing signs of water ingress, deterioration and weathering. And this is one of the reasons that I want to know, well, how do we get these things off? Once they start looking tacky, it'd be nice to take them off. How? I had a look through the Burnside City Council public art policy, and there are several areas of non-compliance, I believe, there. So 6.2.1.1, meant to be installed in levels of high pedestrian traffic. Now, I'd suggest that in Burnside, the only area really of high pedestrian traffic is around the Civic Centre here. Certainly Gers Road I wouldn't call a high pedestrian traffic area. 6.2.1.3 is to serve to anchor the site. Don't know what that means, but it doesn't. 6.2.1.4, enhance the streetscape. Well, some of them do, but most of them don't. 6.2.1.6, they're meant to challenge the intellect and all that sort of thing. They don't really do that either. And 6.2.4, residents weren't really engaged by council. The only communication we had with this was the initial letter from another resident. We didn't get anything from council saying when and what and how and this is what we're planning on doing, all that sort of thing. So yes, I'd like some response from council as to, well, okay, how do we get them down? How long is this project meant to last? And that's it.
Are there any questions of Mr Green? Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for coming along tonight to let us know your thoughts and the thoughts of people in the street. Is there a range of, I haven't looked at them all, a range of art on panels, or is it directly onto Stobie poles, or is it a mixture?
All the artwork is on panels. They're either MDF or they're plywood. Yes, they've just been stuck on with construction adhesive. The first one started to peel off probably about 2 or 3 months after it was put up. And I mentioned this to council, and about 2 days later it was being stuck back up again. So someone's determined to have them stick on the poles, but given the type of the pole and the materials used, I don't know whether that's really going to be practical in the long term.
Councillor Henschke.
Oh, good evening. Thank you for raising our awareness of how it's going. I was wondering if you come across, there's quite detailed policies about this sort of thing in other councils, because other councils have a lot of Stobie pole art, like Port Adelaide Enfield Council.
Yep.
It's very detailed, and as you said, if when you have a look at it, if you haven't, it does detail things that you've pointed out. So, it can only be up there for so many years, and
well, this is one of the questions I asked of
yes.
a number of people, and I couldn't get an answer as to how long they're meant to be there for. I did notice in the Burnside policy that there's nothing in there that talks about the quality of the artwork. I've got no objection to good art, and that one I showed you, the purplish one, that's a really nice piece of work. If they're all like that, I don't think there'd be any complaints, but as it is, it's rather divisive in the community. It's one of those things you try not to comment on in case someone rips your head off because they either hate it or they like it.
Thank you.
Councillor Turn.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I just wondered, who are the artists for these?
Well, from what I understand, the artists were kindergarten and school kids. Now, it doesn't look like anybody's actually gone through and said, well, this will enhance the streetscape, we can put that up. No, that one's just a little bit too primitive for however you want to put it. Let's put it elsewhere. And as I said, we seem to be wildly oversubscribed. 62 panels for, well, I think there's 19 locations listed on a spreadsheet I saw for Gers Road. So it's not surprising that they've spread through Beulah Park, Kensington Park, Kensington. There's some on Shipsters Road, there's some by the sports field, there's some back along Beulah Road, Parade, McGill Road, and some of them are good, but most of them are pretty mediocre, and you would have thought, well, let's leave that in the shed.
Councillor Hallett.
I've just got a question. Do you think that given that it's children prepare, doing the artwork, does it look any worse than actually having a cement pole?
I've got no objection to having a cement pole, and some of the cement poles are just painted a uniform grey colour. I haven't got a problem with that. I'm an engineer. I value function, so cement pole, not a problem. Look, I've got no problem with having good art on there, but some of it, you just look at it and you cringe. There's one that's meant to be a banksia tree, and the branches of it are that wide, and the banksia pods are that big. And it took several looks before I could work out, well, what the hell is it? It was just one of those sorts of things. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Did you have... I was just checking to see if you had another question, but you've turned your mic off. Right, so I don't have anyone else on here, so thank you very much for coming in, Mr Green.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I'm going to go through the reports and find out who wishes to withdraw them. First one is 11.1, the Pump Track Community Consultation. Councillor Davey. Lockwood Road Traffic Councillor Turnbull. Recruitment of independent members of the Audit and Risk Committee. Councillor Cornish. Draft strategic plan, community plan and draft, Councillor Davey. Urban forest management. Can I seek someone to move it? Thank you, Councillor Dawes. Seconded, Councillor Cornish. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Finance end of month report. Councillor Davey. Mayor's activity report. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Cornish. Seconded, Councillor Henschke. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Chief Executive Officer's report. Councillor Hallett.
I've got some questions.
Okay. Right, so we go back to the first one now. Because most of our, all of our deputies have gone, there doesn't seem to me to be any need for us to change the order of the agenda. So we will move through them as they are. The only thing I wanted to alert you to is we do have representative from MacArthur's in the room, and she is here for the confidential item that is currently at the end of the agenda. I'm in your hands as to whether you wish to move that further forward or wait until the end of the meeting. So I would just seek some guidance from you now before we move forward.
Go for coffee and come back at 10:30.
Yes. Yeah, I think stick with the agenda. I'm happy to stick with the agenda.
Can I have a mover then, please?
I'm happy to move the
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Henschke, you seconding it?
No, I was going to suggest we do the pump track, then the report, the CEO report.
But that means going into confidence.
Right, so I'm getting some difference of opinion here. So at this stage, I've got two different opinions, two different motions, potentially. Can I get an indication of hands then as to which way you want to go? CEO, do you want to guide me in this?
Pump track.
I mean, it seems to me everyone wants to go do the pump track first. Okay? So you do that and then the CEO. Can I get hands supporting that, please?
You've got it.
Okay, there's sufficient support to doing it that way. So in that way, we've got one report to discuss, and that starts with Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move in accordance with the recommendation with one addition at the end of Chief Executive Officer, which reads, providing each location is not utilised for longer than 3 months at a time. So that reads, approves ongoing rotation of the pump track between the following locations with timings and order to be at the discretion of the Chief Executive Officer, providing each location is not utilised for more than 3 months at a time, or for longer than 3 months at a time. So I thank the CEO and Barry Cant and all the staff who've been involved in working through all of the issues over many multiple issues to identify these sites for the pump track location. I think it's an equitable solution, reinforced by public consultation, to identify those 5 sites. Penfold Park, Langman Reserve Court, Simons and Simons, Miller Reserve Courts and the Linden Avenue Reserve Car Park. I believe these will be least disruptive to existing court users and park facilities. And I think community consultation supports this, and I think this is a very sensible outcome. The reason I've added that I don't think that it should be the pump track should be located at any site longer than 3 months is about tolerance for the residents. As the report mentions, it means about every 15 months there's a rotation through and exposure to that site. That is if it's a 3 month time frame, and I think that's reasonable. It's reasonable enough amount of time for people to adjust to it being there and then for it to move on. And I think there's flexibility there for the staff to select the locations and rotate them accordingly. So hopefully you'll support this. And thank you again for such a good resolution after a lot of debate and discussion. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Dawes.
I reserve my right.
Right, so then I'll move to Councillor Wilkins.
Oh, well, I was actually going to second it, but I will speak. I have been concerned about Simons and Simons Reserve, and I think 3 months is long enough for it to be there on the paved area, restricting use to the basketball hoop. The thing that worries me about Simons and Simons is the lockable gates. Youngsters have to realise that they're there for a reason. It's to keep small dogs in and to keep young children off the street. So I'm happy with it for 3 months, no longer. And the residents, I believe, do occasionally look at who is using the skate park for a bit of amusement, I think. But thank you.
Not a skate park, pump track.
Pump track, sorry. Yes, well. Freudian slip. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
I've got a question, if I may. My understanding is dogs are not supposed to be in fenced-off playgrounds. Is that not correct?
That's correct, but unfortunately some people use that park as a small dog park, and particularly now when the other dog park is out of commission, rightly or wrongly. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? All right, Councillor Dawes, you have something to say or not? All right, then I'll go back to Councillor Davey.
No, I have nothing to add, so I'm happy to put the motion.
Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And now we are going to move, I'll ask Councillor Cornish to move to go into confidential session, because he's always very good at that.
Did you want
and loves doing it.
Do you want me to read it, or
sorry?
Can we do it as read?
I think we can do it as read.
Yeah, it's
right?
I'd like to move.
I'll get people to vote in accordance. Sorry, we need a seconder. A seconder for Councillor Dawes. All right. Those in favour of moving into confidential mode. Those against. All right, we're ready to resume the meeting, and I believe it's item 11.2 on page 44. Councillor Turnbull would like to move this.
I would, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Right, this is the Lockwood Road report. I'd like to thank those concerned, Alan Harvey and his dedicated team, for this very detailed study and report. I'd like to particularly thank David Hayes as well. I'd like to move some additions to the recommendations of the report, with it to read as follows. Retains the 2 static variable message speed detecting signs on Lockwood Road. Number 2, proceeds with the alteration extension of the 2 existing Lockwood Road 25 km/h school zones with the current approved budgets. Number 3, includes installation of distinctive payment at 3 intersections as recommended in the consultant's report. That is, at the intersections of Lockwood Road with Newland Road, Young Street and High Street, within the draft 2024-25 annual business plan and budget for capital works. 4, includes installation of new Disability Discrimination Act compliant curb ramps as recommended in the consultant's report. That is, on Lockwood Road at its intersections with Young Street and Newland Street within the draft 2024-25 annual business plan and budget. 5, continues to liaise with and support SA Police speed enforcement through the supply of relevant traffic survey data. And number 6, advises the initial petition organiser and respondents of the recent community survey of the outcome of the report. Number 7, sorry about this, it's very long, undertakes a review within 6 months of the final installation. So 3 and 7 are 2 that we have put in, they're extra ones. Now, Councillor Dawes and I have worked together on this motion, so he'll talk about the statistics of the traffic survey. His understanding of statistics is much better than mine. I'll do the people thing. The residents first approached us with their concerns in 2019, and it gave me a shock when Nathan Limberopoulos said his child was now 3. I remember taking flowers to him when the child was born. They have been patient, persistent and respectful. We have high hopes that the suggested measures will help. Traffic issues along the southern section of Lockwood Road, and particularly speeding, has been of great concern to many local residents, particularly to those who live on Lockwood Road and between Greenhill Road and Newland Road. I was first contacted in July 2019, and since then some of the local residents have formed a group trying to get change. Lockwood Road's a secondary road and runs north-south between Greenhill and Kensington Roads. It's parallel to and midway between Hallett and Glenburn Roads. Has a reasonably steep slope at the southern end between Greenhill Road and the intersection with High Street. At this intersection, the Lockwood Road traffic has the right of way with stop signs at High Street, on the High Street. The southern end of Lockwood Road has a church, a busy cafe, ECH housing, a kindergarten, tennis courts and club, and is adjacent to the very large Burnside Primary School. This road's very busy at school drop-off and pick-up times. It's a busy road for a secondary road. The traffic survey of June 2023 showed a daily average of 2,026 vehicles per day. At the council meeting of the 24th of May 2022, it was resolved to allocate 20,000 for 2 static variable message speed detecting signs, to allocate 40,000 for a specialist consultant to undertake a detailed community survey and report, to receive the specialist report and determine how to proceed, and formally liaise with SAPOL regarding vehicle speed monitoring. The residents were advised of all proceedings. Now, we know the endorsed Burnside City Master Plan is taking a holistic view, with council prioritising certain streets for such things as traffic calming. But Lockwood Road's not due for review until 2027. There's a strong representation, particularly from local residents, that measures should be undertaken before then. The consultant report found that with respect to traffic speeds and volumes and recorded crashes, this road is similar to many other secondary roads within the City of Burnside. But when the consultant considered the community engagement feedback, it was found that the high level of concern for road safety and a strong desire for physical intervention by the residents needs to be addressed. This is particularly so because of the concentration of community facilities I've already listed. Survey responses of the residents, see page 84, found that 96% of the surveyed residents had concerns with traffic speeds and 68 had concerns with traffic volumes. Traffic in the morning peak period and safety when reversing from driveways were other concerns. There may be further traffic volume increases resulting from the recently configured intersection at the corner of Hallett Road and Greenhill Road. And as the report indicated, cars queued up to enter Allen Street at school drop-off and pick-up times is an issue. Parking near the cafe will also become an issue. I'll bet my dollar on it. So I very much hope you'll support this motion as our next steps in addressing these issues and in also addressing the concerns of our local residents. I thank you for listening.
Thank you. Councillor Dawes.
Can I reserve my right, Mayor, please?
Yes, you can. I haven't anyone on the screen. Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question regarding number, it's the number regarding the additional 4. Sorry, no, 3. Yeah, 3, distinctive pavement. The question is there a palette for distinctive pavement in the city of Burnside or particularly that area being a heritage, the zoning's not heritage layer, but it's got character in that area, and what type of paving it would be?
Through Madam Mayor, I might refer that to Mr Cant.
Through your worship, the only other similar treatment I'm aware of within this city is McGill Road, with the new treatment that's been put in place. With respect to its heritage listed or heritage area, I'd have to take that on board and we'd consider that as part of the planning. I'm not aware of any restrictions that would be necessary, but we would take that into consideration as part of the design stage.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Yes, I had a question about the distinctive pavement, and I understood it to mean, I mean, there's some wonderful illustrations of different pavement types in the study, especially that one at Beulah Road, Norwood, but I was thinking it was that different textured road pavement, which just indicates to you as you approach that area that is that what is intended?
Through your worship, yeah, that's essentially what it is. If you can picture McGill Village when it goes to a different colour and a different texture, that's essentially, it just delineates between the two surfaces.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. I'm fully supportive of the amended motion. You know, the local ward councillors certainly have been dealing with this for quite some time, and I thank them for doing that. We've all got those little traffic issues. Lockwood Road is a very straight stretch. It starts with a steep hill. You can get some speed up there. There are some significant issues with narrowing at the bridge and children nearby playing. I remember playing there too in that creek as well as a child from earlier. But no, I'm very supportive of the motion as it stands. So yeah, thanks.
Councillor Henschke.
Yes, I also am fully supportive of the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Davey, another question?
Just a question, thanks. Are there any opportunities for planting any of these new traffic installations? Not to the extent that you would on a roundabout perhaps, but at least putting some more greenery in there, because it is getting to be a very hot, heavy paved area, and that would help with streetscape beautification as well, and I think it helps reduce speed. Is that a possibility?
Through Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of the final design, but Mr Cant.
Through your worship, these specific treatments, not necessarily. However, it doesn't mean we can't look at opportunities for greening public space as we always do when opportunities arise. So that's certainly something we'll consider.
Councillor Jones.
I've got a question, please. Now, this is like a question, but it's not my question, so it's a preamble to the question. I think I'm right in thinking that what's different to the officer's recommendation is point number 3. Yeah, but the substantive, the one that's spending money is 3. So my question is, the officers haven't recommended this, and they've obviously recommended some things that are less costly that they think will work. Before we take a decision on the 24-25 budget, is there a way for the administration to say, hey, what we actually proposed has worked? and we don't need to spend this money.
Through Madam Mayor, Mr. Kent.
I can see it now. I can see it now.
Because you guys actually think what your proposal will work.
And you opposite.
Through your worship, we also had in our mind to respond directly to that one is Council's position on financial management at this stage as well, and we took into account the consultant's recommendations. We also said within the report, if Council were of the mind to do further treatments on site, we would also be supportive of the further treatments if Council were willing to include it in the budget. To get to your response about whether or not the initial treatments would have a further success and wouldn't want further intervention, the only way to do that would be to do an additional survey in between doing the two periods of work. So prior to, you could still include it in the draft budget, and then prior to us expending that capital expenditure, we could do another survey at that stage to see whether there's been any effect on, or the impact on the speed.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Jones?
It does. Can I ask a supplemental question?
I thought there might be one coming.
How much would that later survey cost? And I'm sure the CEO will say there's no budget, but would it be worth bringing forward the $12,000 DDA ramps into this year? And $12,000, if that worked, rather than, you could spend $1 million on Lockwood Road. You could put roundabouts and chicanes everywhere. You could slope to a crawl.
If you had a mind to.
Yeah.
Make it one lane, up on the upper hill.
Yeah, that'd be popular.
That would fix it.
To get an update on the speed data to enable us to do a survey, we undertake several of them throughout the city every year, and they're contained within existing operational budgets to allow us to do these type of studies. We'd be talking a maximum of $1,000, and that survey would be included within the operational budgets.
Could I just ask someone, Aaron, Mr. Schroeder, would you mind closing those doors? Because now the orchestra is fired up, the volume is increasing as a distraction, and those doors closed makes a difference. There's no one out there waiting to come in. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Just through Madam Mayor.
It's very nice.
Just to answer Councillor Jones's second part of his question about.
Hang on, one person at a time, please.
Just to answer Councillor Jones's second part of his question about whether it was feasible to bring forward the installation of the DDA ramps.
I would want to see. I'm down to speak.
Through your worship, we could bring that forward, absolutely. Whether or not that would have an impact on the speed, that's probably more designed for pedestrian safety rather than speed, but it will have a more visual impact on that side of things, but we could certainly bring that forward.
Through Madam Mayor, at a cost, do we know what that is? Sorry, Madam Mayor, do we know what that cost is?
Yes, it's included in the report. Give me 2 seconds. I believe it's 12,000.
It's $12,000.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's what Harvey said.
Sorry, I just want Electmos to be clear on that. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkins.
Just a query. Before you actually do any work or lay any paving, would you not bring back to council to actually tell us what is proposed to be done before it's actually laid down? I'm sure we'd all like to see that proposal. And secondly, you say, yes, greening in public spaces can be done. Greening is quite different from landscaping. And we don't want any strappy plants. We want plants that add value to all the premises down the street. Because strappy plants just get left and just become like other places in the city. So I would suggest landscaping needs to be on the agenda as well, to make it uniform along the whole road.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll address the planting one to start with. I don't think we want to address that in a piecemeal fashion. I think planting may come out of the report that we're working with Galpins on at the minute. They may address that one.
Thank you.
And I'll just ask Mr. Cant to give us a comment on how we would normally approach works of this nature, whether we would do it, whether we consult ward councillors or whether it comes back to this group.
Through your worship, normally through the budget process, we are provided the delegated authority to proceed with projects such as this. Now, if consultation is required, that requires a council decision, that would always come back to the council. I wouldn't necessarily be bringing this back to council, and that's not how I'm reading this resolution. However, I would always be doing it in consultation with the ward councillors.
Councillor Davey.
Oh, thank you. No, it was a question and
Councillor Hallett.
I support the recommendations as Councillor Turnbull read out, but I do have a comment about, which is following up in a way on Councillor Jones's comments and perhaps also Councillor Wilkins. On page 51, there's a heading consultation, and it says that 146 residents and non-resident ratepayers, they were posted the survey, and there was only 33 valid responses were received. So to me, that works out to be a 22% return rate. And then of that, when asked if intervention was required, only 22 of them, so 15%, said yes. So to me, that's indicating that we need to do more engagement with them in regard to what they actually want to happen. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Dawes, it's back to you.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for all the comments. All very useful to us. Now, first, I just want to acknowledge Councillor Turnbull, who's taken the lead on this one. We do share resident issues between us, and she was the one that was in contact with Mr. Limberopoulos, who was the deputy tonight. And I also want to, we should also acknowledge Barry Kent, Alan Harvey and David Hayes, because they've been through the journey with us since 2019. This is 4 years, you probably don't realise. And of course Nathan now has a son as well. So it's been 4 years of investigating solutions and seeking to achieve, and the key word here is a balanced approach as to how we can reduce speed in a very busy part of Lockwood Road. Now, Councillor Jennings has already talked about when he went there today. And just a bit of stats, Councillor Turnbull wanted me to mention some of these, that on a daily basis, the number of vehicles above 55 kilometres per hour, above 55, it's not in your papers, was about 140 vehicles per day. 140 are over 55. Now, if there was a police there, you get pinged every time. So that's why Mr. Limberopoulos is talking about this being an issue. Now we have had some initial progress with those speed detection signs, and I certainly slow down when I see them. I don't know who others do. All got to be careful here. But we do have a unique situation on Lockwood Road, as you know, because you've got, from Greenhill Road, it's a steep slope, and I think Councillor Corliss already mentioned it. And we've got these onward speeding issues both ways. It's not just one way, it is both ways. and we've got a number of community facilities on both sides of the road. So it's not just one community facility, there's a lot of things happening in that area. So we wanted to come up with something that did not compromise traffic flows in the area. Because if you cut off a road, you know it's going to affect another road. So we're looking for something that's practical, effective, efficient, feasible. And what we put forward in number 3 tonight is a feasible way of attacking it in the 24-25 budget. We love the fact that the 2 25km/h zones for the kindergarten and the school have been increased by 50 metres each, 100 metres of lower speed limits at those peak times. So that is in the recommendation at number 2. So that's a plus a ditto for the disability compliant curbs. Now the addition we propose for these distinctive intersection pavements, we would like them to be heritage looking. Now Councillor Henske said that we need to provide a precinct feel, and I'm at the end of my term, but I think that's an apt description that I think we do need to come back to this council with what they look like in those 3 intersections, because I think we can make a difference. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Look, I'll vote for this motion. I don't believe these different coloured pavements will slow down hoon drivers 1 millimetre per hour, but we get to revisit it as part of the budget process. Let's see what happens. If the staff can do a refreshed survey before the budget, that'd be great. But yeah, I think this is about as hopeful as saying if we take speed bumps out, once we cut speed limits to 40 k's per hour, people won't speed. I think it's wishful thinking. Anyway.
Just before Councillor Turnbull sums up, I think it's a good case if it's that many cars a day exceeding 50. It's a good place for the police to put a camera. Because fines generally are a pretty good deterrent. All right, Councillor Turnbull.
I'll just quickly summarise. Lockwood Road's an unusual road, secondary road, with so many facilities on it. And when you turn off Greenhill Road and go down it, you zoom, because it's got a lovely slope. And a lot of people do. We've sat at the cafe and watched them. Yes. We've sat with Mr. Harvey and watched them zooming and going, one more, etc. And they come through the intersection, and it is dangerous. So I'm asking for your support to see if we can do something that doesn't cost $1 million, but does help to alleviate the people who live on that road all their worries and stresses. Thank you.
All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Turnbull. Just turn your mic off, please. Right, next one, Councillor Cornish. Recruitment of independent members of the Audit Risk Committee.
Yeah, I pulled it. Obviously, we need to do nominations, so I'll hand over the nominations for people to be on the selection panel to you, Your Worship.
Who would like to nominate for a position on the interviewing panel for the Audit and Risk Committee?
Well, I was going to nominate Councillor Jones and Councillor Cornish.
Will you both accept that nomination, or those nominations? Yes, from Councillor Jones?
I won't, because it'll probably be during work time.
It's difficult with change of job, okay? So we have one. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to nominate for the selection panel.
Right, and obviously you accept it. Is there anyone else who wishes to nominate for the selection committee for the Audit and Risk Committee? No? Then I will declare those 2 positions filled and place those 2 names in the slots. And then, Councillor Cornish, you can run your motion.
Thank you. Move the motion as it's now printed, with Councillor Davey and Councillor Jones and the Mayor being on the selection panel. I hope you support the motion.
seconder, please. Councillor Hubel, you're the seconder?
Yeah, I'll second.
Right.
Nothing to say.
And you don't want to speak? Is there anyone wishes to speak? I had lots of people wanting to second. Councillor Wilkins.
Yes, Your Worship. I just want to make sure that in this process, this election and selection process, will you, as the panel chair, advise the council of the advertisement, where it's placed, when it's advertised, and will you put that out to the auditing or accounting professions? Thank you.
Through Madam Mayor, happy to take this one. Following the process we undertook with the CAP members, I have worked with the team to actually get the recruitment panel involved in every step of the way, and also be very clear, just to take your last point, be very clear about where we're intending on advertising. And so given the nature of what we're seeking here, we will be seeking to advertise. I'm not sure what the recruitment media is for the accounting field, but we'll probably do something through the CPA, CAs, and to ensure that we get coverage. But the short answer is yes, there will be a lot of consultation on the way.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Just a question. Just following on from Councillor Wilkins' question, I've often seen these advertised in the Advertiser. I mean, I know that's seen as old-fashioned by some people, but you see lots of council committees and panels advertised on a Saturday when it's the big paper. Is that a consideration too?
Through Madam Mayor, the only problem I think we have there is it's terribly expensive, and you do it. I'll take guidance from the panel members, but I think these days you get more traction from Seek and the other mediums. That's my only concern with the Advertiser, is it's a terribly expensive way of going about it.
Councillor Jones.
Here's my question. Why don't we put it in our quarterly magazine and our email that goes out monthly? I mean, if we can't find enough chartered accountants and people, lawyers and risk people in the city of Burnside, God help us, frankly. So I think that's a cheap and cheerful alternative to the Advertiser.
Happy to take that on board, Madam Mayor.
I haven't got a seconder for this yet. Councillor, need on the screen, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hubel did. Okay, is there anyone else then now who wishes to speak? Otherwise, I'd like to go back to put the motion. All right, all those in favour, against, carried. Thank you. Now we move to Councillor Davey. Well, it's not necessarily, but Councillor Davey's got her name on the screen already. 11.4.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, page 121, draft strategic community plan and draft environmental sustainability plan.
I move in accordance with the recommendation with a very slight amendment that Council endorses the draft 2023 to 2030 strategic community plan and draft environmental sustainability strategy for the purpose of community consultation. The reason I've added that is that it's a requirement that after we have a council election, we must review our strategic community plan. And I think I want to see it delineated to show the time frame, so that it's, and I guess this is my public service training, we always did this in documentation. So if you're publishing a community plan or a management plan, you put the start date and the end date. And this only includes the 2030 date. So it shows, if we include 2023, it shows this is the year that we've done it. We've reviewed it since it acknowledges that we've reviewed it since the election, and it's got 7 years to run till 2030. It's a lot of work's gone into this, and I appreciate the opportunity to have our input. Most of the feedback has been taken on board. I think URPS has done a pretty good report. So I can't add anything. I think it's ready to go out for community consultation, and I hope that you'll endorse this and we can send it out. Thank you.
Councillor Henschke?
I've questioned.
Need a second first.
Oh, sorry. Right, yes, I'll second this. And,
all right, and then ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. On page 151, the UPRS report makes a statement about themes that have arisen, themes to further explore. And one of the statements was creating green spaces within the road reserve. And I just wanted to check with the administration how they understand creating green spaces within the road reserve. Are you sure what about 151? 151, I'll just double check it. I just wrote it in my notes. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through. Oh. Right, page 151. Oh, 175, right. 165. Okay, yes, sorry, I didn't write down my page numbers correctly. So thank you, Mr. Cant. 165. Yep, so there's a list of themes, questions, themes to explore, based on the information, themes to explore for the environmental goal. So this, yeah, the question is then, creating green spaces within the road reserve, as was one of the bullet points there, is that what we've got in our policy we've got later on to approve? And does that mean what we were talking about tonight with Lockwood Road, you know, instead of just putting more paving everywhere, that we put paving and some green spaces? And maybe if we've got wide roads, we create green spaces in the middle of these roads. It was just it's a particular theme I thought was just caught my attention. I didn't quite understand what it meant in practice. Thank you.
Through Madam Mayor. Mr. Cant, can we provide some enlightenment on that one?
Through your worship, I think you've described it well, Councillor Henschke, and it's alluding to what Councillor Wilkins was talking about earlier on as well. But we have to do in a strategic approach. So you'll be familiar with the city master plan that's talking about precinct planning for priority areas throughout the city over a period of time. And Dulwich and East Road are the first cab off the ranks with respect to those. Now that's fundamentally looking at traffic management and pedestrian safety, but it's also looking at movement, it's also looking at environmental enhancements, it's looking at recreational opportunities, etc., etc. And it's about planning a precinct holistically and then looking at environmental opportunities at the same time as part of the design of the traffic management opportunities. Now, we always look at opportunities when we do upgrades like this. If it's a major departure from what's currently there, we'll always bring that opportunity back to council, and the council will have the opportunity to be involved and or fund it through the appropriate channels.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Hallett.
I've got a question about consultation again. In regard to, on page 133, it says that at point 2, it says the council member information session on the 1st of August, and then a staff workshop on the 8th of August, and then a drop-in session on the 31st of August. And I'm not sure, was it a drop-in session for the community, or because at that night we actually had a pub track session. So I'm just wondering what the drop-in session was.
Through your worship, sorry, that could have actually been worded a little bit better. That was intended as a drop-in session for the wider staff members, anyone on the organisation who wish to be involved in it.
Yeah. And then point 3, community consultation on draft strategic plan, principles and priorities. Is that Burnside 2030 or it is? Okay. And is that coming or it's happened?
I understand that's what's coming.
It's what's coming.
Yep.
Thank you.
Did you have any further questions, or do you want to speak on the matter?
Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Wilkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm on page 127 under Place and Heritage, and I look at 3.2 where it says balancing planned growth with protection of character and heritage. And several times, protection of character and heritage, in my opinion, should come first, and balancing planned growth second. All our residents are on about the value of our heritage and in our place, but here we balance the growing demand for housing with protection of our character. Why not turn it around? Put protection, for me, it's protection of our character and heritage that comes first, and in consideration with balancing for planned growth. For me, that's what we should be saying to our residents. And it seems to me that growth of the place has priority over what we already have, which is the essential ingredient why people come to live in Burnside, is character, heritage in this place. So I just make that point because I'd like it promoted up front.
I think just to have a look at the part in grey above that, where I know, are you trying to suggest that that should come first there as well, or just in that? Okay, because I understand what you're trying to say in relation to the wording. I think we've swayed somewhat by the demand for growth that is put on us by the state government. So
this is not state government.
No, I appreciate that, Councillor Wilkins, and I'm going to let Mr. Cant answer.
Thank you.
Through your worship, I absolutely take your point, and I'm more than happy to swap the order of preference around there. But I will say that we do talk about balancing, so we are being very mindful. And as you'd be aware by sitting through our confidential workshops on this, we have taken great strides to ensure the protection and increase of those zones that you're talking about.
I haven't anyone else on the screen. Does anyone wish to speak? All right, then I will go back to Councillor. I just want to say, first of all, I think there's an immense amount of work that's gone into these two documents, and I want to thank the staff and URPS and everyone involved in it. I think it's an incredibly, with the minor changes that you want to make, Councillor Wilkins, I acknowledge. I think it's an incredibly good document. It's very well written, it's very well structured, and it's a credit to this council that this goes out like it is in the main to the community for consultation, and I just wanted to commend everybody who's been with their input into it. And now Councillor Davey. All right, then I shall put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now moving to 11.6, Finance End of Month Report. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I move in accordance with the recommendation, and I just had a quick query come comment. How delighted I am on page 209 in the notes. Our year-to-date user charges are significantly higher than budget, mainly due to the impact from increased rate on hoarding fees. A review is to be conducted during the first quarter budget review to identify budget adjustment requirements. So I believe this is in the order of over $100,000, and I'm very pleased that we're actually recouping some of that money from, as everyone knows, it results when building work's undertaken and people commandeer our footpaths and other parts of our council. And we actually increased the fees at the last budget consideration. So I think there's a bit more fairness and equity in the system now, and it's great that we're getting the financial benefit of it. So thank you to the CEO and the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cornish. I was just about to ask for a seconder.
Happy to second.
Right. And Councillor Hubel, you just were about to second as well. Do you wish to speak? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? I have an empty screen. Councillor Davey, can I go back to you then? All right, they're all in favour? Against? Carried. Now we move to cheat Sorry, we move to Chief Executive Report, page 216, 11.8. That's you, Councillor Hallett. I haven't got any. No, Councillor Cornish, you got there first.
I did. I think Councillor Hallett only wanted to ask
She
a
wanted to-
question
yeah.
anyway, but I'm happy to move in accordance with the officer's recommendation, which doesn't preclude Councillor Hallett from seconding and asking a question.
Absolutely fine, because I was about to ask Councillor Hallett that question. So, Councillor Hallett, do you have some questions?
Yes.
Or would you like to second the motion first?
I'm not sure whether I might want to change.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't. It doesn't
I'll
matter.
second it.
You can,
Yep.
unless you want to change the motion. If you want to ask questions, then it's a different story. But you can vote against whatever you, even if you second. Yeah. So, okay. Sorry,
Councillor.
Do you not want to second it? Do you want to?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So it's seconded by Councillor Wilkins, and Councillor Hallett's going to ask a question.
My question relates to page 222 and 223, Kensington Gardens Reserve Cricket and Rugby Club Rooms redevelopment. And the first question, I have two questions, one about community engagement and one about funding. So the first question is in regard to the clubs have both federal and state government, and I assume the word missing is funding in place, and so I'm wondering how much that is.
Through Madam Mayor, Mr. Canch, have those figures on top of his head?
Through your worship, I believe the agreements are still to be finalised. They're formally in place, but my understanding is it's up to 6 million.
Oh, sorry.
The next question is, and it's the last dot point in that section, and it says, in terms of next steps, Council is working with representatives of the club to determine proposed timeframes and lock in the final design. As far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any consultation with the community about the design. There was an article that had an artist's impression of what it might look like, and I think there is a good deal of interest about what's actually going to happen, what it's going to look like, how big it will be. I know they've said it's going to be within the existing footprint. This doesn't mention anything about releasing a draft design for community consultation. And I also noted that there's no council, apart from administration, there's no councillor rep on what I'm not sure what they're calling it, but the management committee to oversee the project.
Through your worship, I refer you to the paragraph on page 222 directly underneath that section, underneath the heading for that section, and you'll see that all final approval of design and budget allocation still rests with Council. So there's an outstanding resolution that says I must bring it back to Council. What we're doing is working with the club representatives to formalise governance arrangements, the appropriate approval process, which may include community consultation. That'll be subject to council consideration as well. But also we are looking at prudential reviews and also our requirements from a probity and auditing perspective to provide council with all of the relevant information to enable them to support this project going forward. So we're aiming to provide this report hopefully by November of this year, and I'll keep the ward councillors involved as we proceed. Through your worship, Council has set parameters in the initial and principal support which talked about the appropriate aesthetics and design as well as footprint on the reserve and the environmental considerations of the build. If Council wish to proceed to full consultation, we will include that option as part of the council report, and we can have that conversation at that time. So it's certainly an option, but it's not something that's mandated.
Out there with the members.
Councillor Wilkins.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I would hope there is consultation with not only council but also with the membership of the organisations who use Kensington Gardens, the cricket, rugby, whatever. My question, are we on the CEO, we're voting on the CEO's report, aren't we? Oh, right. I go to page 220 where the CEO is attending the strategic planning session on Saturday the 7th of October to represent council's interest with the board of BRSI. Is this coming after the long weekend? Is there a particular reason for this strategic planning session? Do ward councillors get to go to find out why the residents are unhappy or not, or concerned about issues at BRSI? Can I ask that question?
Certainly, through Madam Mayor, this strategic planning session is, I guess, just part of the normal planning session a board would go through. Yeah. But in particular, I think the committee are going to be looking at what the village might look like in the future, and so I think it's very important that I'm in that room when they have that conversation.
As with the community representatives.
In terms of if residents have general concerns, I think it's important they raise that with the management at BRSI. This strategic workshop isn't designed to address general operational concerns. This is about how the board's going to manage BRSI going into the future.
I understand.
Or recently.
I am
community representative.
So I'll leave it at that.
Can I pick that up with you later? Yes. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. My question is on page 226, and it's regarding the Ordana North illegal tree removal. I'm just wondering if you have an update about the funding to assist with the signage and replacement tree planting. And then a follow-up. I've got another question about the site. Thanks.
Yep. I certainly do, Madam Mayor. The Minister has obviously, as it's printed there, has provided us with $50,000, which is absolutely fabulous, and I've spoken to the Minister and thanked him for that. Now, the Minister was seeking to plant 15 mature trees on the site, and I took the team out with me and we walked the site with representatives of Trees for Life, and barring helicoptering in the trees, it's near impossible to plant a mature tree on that site. So I've gone back to the Minister's office and suggested an alternative approach, and I'll just list off the things that I've asked the Minister to approve in this funding. One is a large real estate style sign to go on the verge, which is in the cul-de-sac as you go down to this reserve, clearly talking about our concerns and what's happened in the reserve. A large, very large banner style sign to be placed on the actual site facing up the hill. Asking the Minister to help fund remediation of the site. That's chopping up the trees that have been felled and removing the waste material. Looking at planting mature trees, but not in that location, but at sites through Burnside, and providing some sort of plaque or recognition at each one of those trees which acknowledges that these were planted because of the actions that happened at Aldana. What have I missed, Mr. Cant?
Through your worship, if you actually have a look at 226 of the report there, it's all listed within the CEO report. So you've also got improved surveillance of the area.
Oh, surveillance, that's one thing I missed, sorry, thank you, sorry. CCTV, we're looking to put some wireless CCTV in there to monitor the site, and the last step, sorry, it's come back to me now, should have read my notes clearer, is to promote passive surveillance by way of putting a walking track across the fence, just below the fence line that's there. So that will connect up to an existing walking track at either end, and that will provide us with the opportunity of passive surveillance rather than the site being not visited regularly. I've had some preliminary feedback from the Minister's advisors. They're very happy with the proposal. I've asked my team to start work on the signage and the Minister's happy for us to proceed. The idea being that within, it's the week after the sitting week. I think they're sitting this week? Don't know. So Parliament's sitting either this week or next week, and the Minister would like to have a photo opportunity the week after. So the Minister is arranging for television media to be there.
Great.
And I'd like to think there's a follow-up with radio media as well. So that's where it sits at the minute.
Thank you, that's great. Great work and many different aspects. I'm just getting worried that it's nearly up to 8 weeks since the vandalism was discovered, and there's that momentum loss with the banner not going up and the signage. So that should be up in the next couple of weeks. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. So Mr. Kent can probably give me a date on the signage.
Through your worship, I believe it's either next week or the week after, but no later than 2 weeks.
Yep. So given the size of the signs we're talking about doing, and we're going to do, obviously we've got to design the artwork, I agree, we need to keep the momentum going, but we're going to keep pushing this one, and I'm really looking forward to the media coverage with the Minister.
Councillor Hallett.
This is just a comment to make people aware of. On page 233,
you realise commentary is speaking on the motion?
Well, I'll ask a question. On page 233...
Councillor Hallett, I have to...
That's right,
I think you just need to clarify your thinking about this, because I don't want to have to shut you down.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have to remind you every council meeting.
Yeah. Okay. So, on page 233, it's approvals for driveway and gutter crossings maintaining footpath accessibility standards. Do the administration know that the state government is consulting through their Your Say website on driveway and gutter crossing and maintaining footpath accessibility?
Through yes, we are absolutely aware of that one.
Okay. And I've got one more. In regard to page 251, and which is a letter to the Mayor from the Minister, it mentions on the third paragraph that Council has been asked to make 6 changes to its strategic management plans. Can I ask what those changes are?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll refer that to Mr. Birch.
Through the Mayor, the disclosure letter we received last year had some observations in it. I think it was 6 from memory, but most of them were continue the good work. There wasn't actually necessarily major changes requested. A couple of comments were in regards to monitoring CPI and our estimates that we had in the future of our long-term plan, but that was because the review was done 12 months ago when CPI was increasing considerably from what the forecast we'd had in the plans already.
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, I don't believe there are 6 changes to be made. I think they've worded their letter incorrectly. What you tend to find with these letters is they come from a pro forma.
Yeah, standard.
So there were 6 observations. 4 of those observations said continue what you're doing. And there was the two that Chris just alluded to were two minor changes.
Okay.
You finished now, Councillor Hallett? Now, Councillor Wilk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would suggest the trees on the biodiversity site. Perhaps the CEO could take a few acorns in his pocket and drop them in judicious places along the trail. So there's this wonderful green canopy in 100 years' time. Beautiful oak trees that nobody can cut down. Secondly, page 245, we're on to the Brown Hill Keswick Creek, Glenside, and I note that Council has taken over the management of the detention basin. Can you give us an update on the fencing and the perhaps security safety cover over the round concrete pipe that's open to the whole oval?
Through Madam Mayor.
How's Peter going to play in the creek?
Through Madam Mayor, we actually met with the CEO a week and a half ago, and he gave me a very...
Mark?
Yes, Mark.
Yes.
Yep, he gave me a little bit of a cryptic, I asked him about it, and he mentioned that they obviously needed to commit to repairing that fence.
Yes.
I
When?
suspect I need to give him a hurry up. He hasn't committed.
Big hurry up.
So I will be engaging with him on another matter. So I will put that in the conversation.
Thank you.
I think you must have read the man who planted trees, because he dropped acorns, hundreds of thousands of them. Mike Dawes. You right, Councillor Dawes?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were still talking to Councillor Wilkins. I apologise. Now I'm going back to page 222, but a different part. Can we go to the third to bottom dot point? And it does annoy me because I think there was Councillor Hallett, Councillor Jennings, myself, the Mayor, who were on this briefing from the State Planning Commission. It was during the day, so it was like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and we listened to it. And they were so keen for us, or for them, to distribute information taught to councils. So I thought, so I mentioned it at the council meeting to the CEO, and we asked for them to provide a presentation to our council, and they declined. So I am disappointed by that. So whether we're a lot of councils, but there was so much information in there that I thought they could have provided.
If I may, Madam Mayor, I share your concern because I was at one of those sessions.
You were there too, right? That's right.
And I
you
distinctly recall them, and obviously I thought that's what they said, that they were prepared to come and do individual council sessions. But clearly
perhaps
I misunderstood.
We're one of many, I don't know, but I'm just disappointed to read that. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Because otherwise I will go back. No, Councillor Jennings.
Could the CEO ask again, because there was a lot of information there?
Through Madam Mayor, I suspect I may be asking in vain, but what I can do is attempt to redistribute the information. So I'll have a chat to the team, and we might see if we can resend out the information. Because I'll get the same answer again, I'm afraid.
Any further comments? I've got no one on the screen, so it's Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. I will just follow up with a CEO comment or question. Perhaps an ERA. We organise and host all of the ERA councils for the Planning Commission to come out here, so they can do maybe 5 or 6 councils at one go. That might be an option that might be more appealing to them. So that's just my option, but I'm happy to put the motion.
Yeah. I'll share that with you, Madam Mayor.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carry. Now we have questions on notice. You've been received the response to that. Motions on notice. First one is 13.1. That's Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I have moved this motion. I have done significant work with one of the ward members of Rose Park, who's Peter Cornish, who has a reviewed motion. So I'll speak to this and then hope that people will support, because I don't think we can do anything else in terms of amendments to motions. So we've heard tonight from some very interested residents with stakeholders, and I think we've all been lobbied, who are stakeholders, we've all been lobbied extensively about Hanson Reserve. We all know it's within beautiful Tusmore Park and it's one of our key biodiversity sites. I'll reiterate again that Council in our biodiversity policy recognises the value of these sites and that we have responsibility for managing them. And I think a lot of the aspects that we reinforce in our biodiversity policy were reinforced by people tonight, which talk about sustaining the community's sense of place, supporting cultural and aesthetic experiences, place attachment, recreation, education and cognitive development, as well as inspiration for culture, art and design. And we all recognise there are well-documented human health benefits from experiencing nature and biodiversity. So I think with all of the events of recent weeks on this site, which are a repeat of what happened 2 years ago, around 2 years ago, we all recognise that we need a careful balance for our management of this site. It's been remediated as a wooded sanctuary with much effort and input from Council after a major flood incident in 2005. So the huge amount of plantings and the biodiversity values were really enhanced then. The surrounding community value the plants and bird life, and as we've heard, the beauty of this reserve, which is a nice little corner in the huge magnificence of Tusmore Park with a couple of 2 or 3 lovely ovals. So it's a really interesting park. I think what's come out tonight is that we need to provide a lot more information to the community. The community want to be involved in protecting it and nurturing it. And I think we need to emphasise why the area is so valuable. So that's the reason for my initial motion on notice, that we actually keep under surveillance the work that we're doing on this site and that we involve the community in it. They certainly want to be involved. At the same time, we have to make it a safe area. Many locals walk and run through the area. Kids play in the creek, and every afternoon I've been there walking my dogs. You've seen kids playing in what's left of the creek in the last weeks of it before it dries up. Many cyclists use the adjacent access path, which helps them ride from the city, from Norwood, right through the park up to Tusmore and beyond. So all I'm asking is that as we've become aware of some aggressive behaviours and damage from visitors to the area, that we review the maintenance and preservation of the site, the signage provided, and so that we have a balance for safety and for users, especially children enjoying the nature play and the creek, and those who are a lot more elderly who regularly walk in the area. So there is an amended motion which I support, and I hope you will too. So hopefully someone will second this, and that will allow Councillor Cornish to move his amended motion. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkins, you're seconding?
Absolutely, thank you. I may speak?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I wasn't here earlier to hear the representatives, but on the afternoon that I went down to Hanson and Tusmore Park, I spoke to Will Cheeseman and his partner and his neighbour. And having walked around the site and absolutely marvelled at the old Moreton Bay fig that's on the side of the creek, the eucalyptus growing through the roots of this amazing Moreton Bay. It is just mind-blowing. I understood. It took me back to reading The Famous Five and The Secret Seven. It's a boys' own adventure playground. It is fantastic, but the parents are responsible for their children's activities and they are across it. I support the CEO in the walking track barrier styles that are there, that are black, of course, which will prohibit some straight through traffic on bicycles. But I was there at the end of the day when school time came out, and I have to say that the students then were walking along the path alongside, on the western side, through the oval, around on the creek side, and there was not anything else happening. I was about the only person there for about a good half an hour. They were all just walking along chatting. What a great way to be able to walk to school through that place. It is a fantastic little park. Councillor Davey made me aware of it, and hence I thought, right, I've got to go down and have a look. And I'm just blown away that they can actually walk in the creek, and there's the cobbled pathway down to the creek. It is just a great space. And I think we actually have to do some more planting there to complement what Andrew Crompton had already done in his time here. So, and there was an interpretive sign there, fine. But just make it, the plants, identify the plants that are there so people don't tread on and break them, and et cetera, et cetera. So I happily support this motion for this site. Thank you.
Councillor Court.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I have an alternative motion which may be accepted by the mover and the seconder as a variation to the motion. So it's just a little bit slimmed down, and given some of the commentary we heard this morning, I wonder also in the title of 13.1 whether or not we can remove the vandalism word, maybe to remove the inflammation out of that and just refer to it as Hanson Reserve, like as being the start of that motion, because I don't want it filtering down through the minutes if we can change the actual title. So basically, I've tried to put a bit more of a positive spin on Councillor Davies' motion about bringing the community together, looking at the maintenance and preservation of the site. I don't think this is the latest version that I sent through earlier, because I had another section and I changed a few more words, if that's possible. Sorry. I'd done one earlier tonight, but after hearing some commentary from some of the residents, I made a few adjustments during the meeting, so I do apologise. Thank you. So it also looks at whether or not we might do a co-design plan process as well with some members of the community, try and bridge some of those issues that are happening down there at the park. It has been very divisive down there. I've also sort of reorientated the ranger and patrols not just to be for the Hanson Reserve but the wading pool. As many of you know, there is some issues with the wading pool, and that season's about to open as well, and I'd like to see what those sort of costs are to look at that, especially if there are 20-some-year-olds drinking there at midnight and stuff like that, which we've had in the past. So, you know, I certainly hope you support this motion. I haven't added in the CEO's request to maybe look at some things, but I think you might have potentially the ability to do that, if that's okay. But yeah, this basically looks at preserving the biodiversity, bringing the community together to, you know, maybe, you know, deter any interference with the plants and the biodiversity and the wildlife, but also to try and find that balance for the children playing in the creek and around the area as well, because we need that balance in that park. So it is a fine line that we need to walk, and I hope you know, you guys accept the motion as a variation to the original.
Happy to accept, particularly the waiting hall. Looks dreadful at the moment.
Councillor Dawes?
I don't need a second if
No, we've already got a second. Councillor Davey moved it, Councillor Cornish seconded.
No.
Councillor Wilkins seconded it.
Oh, sorry.
I put the variation up and they've both accepted the variation.
Oh, they both accepted it. Oh, I was just saying that the operative word here is balance. I think you said it 4 times. And I think you are so right. But yeah, there are 2 sides to every story. Don't worry about that. I think there are perhaps some naughty children out there as well. And I don't necessarily agree that they can put up mounds out of nowhere. I can understand it's what perhaps Peter Cornish did when he was younger, but I don't know if I did. Perhaps I did. I can't remember. But yeah, this is a difficult issue for us because we've got 2 different points of view from the community, and we need to get it right and provide. I think the most important one there was number 6. Yeah, that is the most important part of this motion. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to contribute? I just want to make one comment, and that's, I think, the suggestion from one of the deputies, Anna Dawson, about the idea of getting the children involved so that help them to understand why the biodiverse area was important and why that potential conflict arises. And I think getting them involved at that age, upper primary, they can certainly understand that. So,
100%.
Councillor Jones.
Can I ask a question, please?
Certainly.
Noting that the reserve in question is actually surrounded by people in Norwood, Payneham and St Peter's Council, how are we going to survey or get the viewpoint of people surrounding it, given that they don't actually live in our council area?
Through Madam Mayor, I think we could do a fairly simple letterbox drop and get their feedback that way. I think that'll work.
We're not going to get told off by...
I don't believe so.
We're already working with Norwood Payneham.
Yeah, so they are aware of. We're in dialogue, and we could even potentially do a joint letterhead or something or other. So no, I don't think so. No.
Councillor Davey.
Am I allowed to sum up?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much to everybody for their input, and to Councillor Cornish for crafting such a good compromise. It's been a very interesting night, and as I said, week or 2 getting all the feedback on this site. There have been some naughty children and some misbehaviour. We need to make this a safe place. We need to educate the community about it, and as the Mayor has said, emphasise the importance of the biodiversity site and the beauty of it, and really enhance that. It's in a corner of a beautiful park, and we're already working with the Norwood, Payneham and St Peter's councillors. They're aware of what we're doing. The staff are in dialogue with the Norwood staff. So I think as long as we keep talking, keep thinking about what we can do, adjusting things, because we've heard some feedback tonight, and I think when we get a report in 8 weeks that this will be hopefully a long way towards the resolution, and we can restore our beautiful park and get rid of the antagonism that has appeared there. So hopefully you'll support this. Thank you.
CEO just wants to make a comment before I put it to the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make a quick comment. There was a fair bit of rhetoric from the deputies about those cross bollards that have been erected. I thought, as a gesture of goodwill, while we're progressing all this, if I was to pull them out, I don't need it in the resolution. I just want to share with you what I'm intending on doing, just as a gesture of goodwill. I'll take the feedback from the ward councillor, with the ward councillors. I'm sorry.
I think the deputy also mentioned the swing as being quite important to the local the rope swing across the creek. So, as well. But I think the bollards were a barrier that really arced the community up and got 4 of them here at least tonight.
The bollards are a simpler exercise. The swing, I actually think my insurers have a problem with the swing, so I may not be able to put that one back.
Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now we move to 13.2, 263. Councillor Turnbull?
Yes, I'm aware of the time too. I was hoping to get this in, to be honest. It notes that currently under the leasing and licensing of community facilities policy, many communities...
Sorry, Councillor, you don't need to read it out.
Okay, good.
You just go with the recommendation unless you want to add something.
Number 3, though, I would like to just mention that we would need to make our leasing in line with current financial times. That's my big word, current financial times. I've entitled my rationale for this motion, Replenishing the Coffers of Burnside Council. Subtitle, even by a little bit. The term peppercorn rent is an archaic but still legal term signifying a rental agreement where the lease payments do not reflect the fair market value of the property that's being leased, quote Wikipedia. In the city of Burnside, we have many clubs and organisations enjoying peppercorn rents. Please see the list I've put on your table, as was published as a question of notice. And how much is a peppercorn rent? $1 a year. I repeat, $1 a year. Ludicrous, I can hear a particular councillor saying. That this needs to be reviewed was brought home to me when 8 new tennis courts and a new clubhouse were completed in Kensington, Wymer. Council paid approximately $500,000 for this project, and basically for a small proportion of our ratepayers whose money it was. The terms of the lease were very generous. Booker court revenue to be paid to the club, access to even the community courts when courts required for competitions, a club coach who was able to use the council courts to run a business, etc., etc. And what happened? At the council meeting 9th of May 2023, the club management came to council asking for all courts to be used by their coach, even the community court. And worse, the club removed them as patron because council didn't allow them to use the full use of the community court. And for this, they pay $1 a year. There's an obvious sense of entitlement here, another use of that word entitlement, that doesn't sit well. However, in using this club as an example, I'll say that some clubs are appreciative of the work done by Burnside Council and work cooperatively with them. But let's treat the sporting clubs with equity. Cost of living increases have impacted on us all, including the council. Projects have been delayed so as to keep the rates down for ratepayers. Our leases need to be updated and made more realistic to fit in with 2023. So I propose a review of all the sporting clubs in the city of Burnside which operate on the $1 a year lease. A comparison with the rents charged at other metropolitan councils could be a starting point. The city of Charles Sturt's sporting and community fees policy has their aim is to ensure fair and equitable consistent approach to licences which encourages high utilisation rates of all organisations occupying council facilities so they are sustainable. It's a good word, sustainable. And maybe rent could be charged by the area of the clubhouse, whether the said sporting clubs are proactive with fundraising to support improvements and inclusive programs. I could hear people saying, but children can't be fundraising. They can sell raffle tickets and biscuits and have sausage sizzles, and their parents and grandparents can help them. Could a consideration perhaps be made as to what maintenance is done at the club, noting that sweeping a tennis court is less maintenance than preparing a bowling rink? But I trust that the administration will devise a way to assess the value of the leases in a fair and equitable way. I ask for your support for this motion to gain a report which will bring the City of Burnside sporting clubs into this decade with realistic monetary leases. Thank you.
Councillor Jones is...
Yes, I would like to second, and I will reserve my right.
Councillor Dawes?
Can I ask a question here, first of all? There's no timeline given for this report. Can I ask administration what they think is a appropriate time to have the report back to us?
Through in a Mayor, I'll seek some advice from Mr. Cant on that one.
Through your worship, so I'm just familiarising myself with the wording of the motion. And listening to Councillor Turnbull's commentary, there's quite a bit that we actually do need to investigate to provide council with full information. And just thinking about our forward agenda and work already planned, would you be comfortable with early 2024? So by January, February 2024?
Are you happy with that nominal commentary, or do you want it to go into the motion, Mr. Cant?
I'm happy to commit to that, and if I can bring it back sooner, I'm more than happy to do so.
Fine, thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your motion, Councillor Turnbull. I'm happy to support this. I am concerned that there are so many anomalies and possible inequities in what is charged for and what support is given to some clubs and some bodies over others. And the other thing in terms of rent, it might be that we sustain the peppercorn rent, but I think we need to look at the situation of each of these types of bodies. I mean, preschools differ to kindergartens, differ to the Girl Guides, and Beaumont Tennis Club. So, I mean, some of these clubs do fabulous work, and that jumps out at me. Beaumont Tennis Club maintains their facilities superbly themselves and probably deserves their peppercorn rent. Whereas some of other places don't do a thing in the grounds or surrounds of their club rooms or their facilities that they're offered. So I'd like to see us review this, perhaps review the leasing and licensing of community facilities policy, because that would have to be reviewed and upgraded to enable this. So I think it's a very worthwhile report, and I'll welcome it. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Look, I will briefly speak, and I'd perhaps like the staff to consider this in their report, but one word speaks to me on this is diversity. Because what we have at the moment, we know we've got limited space in the city of Burnside. So effectively, if you set up an Anglo-Saxon sporting club 100 years ago, you will still be in that site today, and you've got it forever. And you've got no real incentive to maximise use of that. And say you were a person, as we know is happening, wants to set up a badminton club. Basically, there's no space for you. And there's no mechanism for you to say, we'll actually make better use of that facility to have as a badminton club rather than one of 5 tennis clubs. If you wanted to set up a kabaddi club, which is a popular sport in India, how would you do it? Because all the spaces have gone. So I just think, you know, the Mayor's often talks about, you know, Burnside is changing, much as I may dislike the fact, I have to perhaps recognise it's happening. And I think it would be useful to address in the report. So I think that's another reason to support this report and Councillor Turnbull's motion.
Councillor Howe.
I'd like to thank Councillor Turnbull for bringing this motion too. I think it's an important motion for us to consider. I think that while a peppercorn rent might be at times the desired outcome, I think that we do need to make the clubs more accountable for community outreach to ensure that we are getting best value because if you add up what a lot of those clubs are getting, it's quite a significant financial contribution. And I think, but we don't really require them to deliver much back to the community in exchange. So I'd be looking at saying, like, either they pay a formal rent, or if they get a peppercorn rental, they have to meet certain standards in outreach to the community.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Councillor Turnbull. My history of sport, not that I play it, but I've had a significant history dealing with sporting groups. I read this motion, I have to admit, Councillor Turnbull, and I was like, I'm never voting for this. Purely from the fact that, you know, not-for-profit organisations, stacked with volunteers, they really are trying hard to deliver something for our community, and I'm quite up for the peppercorn. But in hearing some of the commentary tonight, one which dropped my jaw, which I think some people saw my jaw drop absolutely and utterly, I'm happy to actually entertain this. I want to see this report. I do believe what Councillor Jones has mentioned in terms of diversity, but that can be done with the Anglo Club. They could go, we're not using it, you know, we're only using it 20% of the time. How about we actually bring in this other club to actually use it for the other 80% of the time, and we'll actually stay here a bit longer. Like, they can do the subleasing and subletting and sublicensing, obviously with our permission. And I do believe that that builds community, that brings people together, and that builds community. But I do believe I do want to see some information about potentially increasing from peppercorn. In this city. It's something I don't think I ever would have said until I had heard some of the things tonight. So thank you for bringing it to this chamber, and I will support the motion.
Councillor Jenny.
I'm 6 of one, half a dozen the other. So I've been to a couple of these clubs, and I've been to a lot of the sausage sizzles, and I've been to a lot of the happy hours, and I have noticed that when I look around at these pubs, none of these clubs have pokey machines in them, and that makes it a pretty happy and friendly place to go. And if you start potentially upping rents, and they're going to have to look at income streams, I understand there'll be mobs of people who will go, we can help you out if you just put a few of these machines in your corner. And I don't like a slope, and there's nothing worse than a slippery slope. So, thank you.
You can't do that.
Yeah, I just might comment, if I may, Madam Mayor, that our policy currently doesn't allow poker machines.
They can't do that.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilkins.
Yes. I look at this list. Thank you for asking me this list, Councillor Turnbull. But in this list, I see a lot of community activity, participation, isolation, well-being. All of these phrases instantly spring to mind, because this is what is happening in all of these, or most of these, organisations. And they provide a place, an activity that is beneficial for their needs. And I won't be supporting this, because here's the Grove Kindy in Eastwood, packed with children. The day I went there and the fire brigade came to visit. Eastwood Community Centre, they have a lease, but they also do a lot of good to a lot of people in the community, and not only in the wider community as well, in offering all the ACE courses that they have. So, and as I'm a member of a Rotary Club of Burnside does a lot of work out there and in the wider community as well. So it's sporting, it's community, and I think we need to assist all of these people who basically would live, most of them would live in the city of Burnside. So no, I won't be.
Councillor Dawes.
Yes, thank you. As you know, I've been involved with sport all my life. This is a report, and I'll be interested to see what the results will be from this report. I'm with Councillor Cornish here as well, from the point of view that we need just to, we are looking at times from 100 years ago or more, and let's see what comes back from administration. And it may be that they could, perhaps, for clubs that have done a lot of work, suggest that they have a very low rent compared to perhaps other clubs. Now, I don't know, because what they are saying, what the motion is saying in number 3, is provide options. And so we may not even think of some of the options now. So I think this is appropriate for 2023, and I'm looking forward to reading the report. But I would like to include that the report is in January 24 in the motion, if I could suggest that. Yeah.
Realistically, I'm thinking of February rather than January if Councillor Turnbull approves, because a lot of January is lost with time and leave, etc. Okay. Yeah. Mr. Cant? Okay. Can I just add some little thing, because I've got no one else on here before I go back to Councillor Turnbull, and that is looking at, the council obviously will look at comparative councils and the way that they have changed, or if they have changed their funding. I understand both sides of the story. I think it's important that we are working consistently with other councils and not acting completely, in a completely different direction. Because we will have some clubs in different council areas that will, like Rotary Lions, etc., who operate in different councils, and we would like to see some kind of commonality. Because certainly clubs like those do an amazing job. Anyway, that's not for me to enter into. So I will go back now to Councillor. Councillor Davey, did you want to say something?
I was just going to ask if I could move. We're getting to nearly 10:30.
No, I'm waiting. It's one more minute, and then I have to ask for extra extension of time. I'd just like to try and finish this off with Councillor Turnbull.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. With due respect, I'm not talking about Eastwood Community Centre or Girl Guides or kindergartens. It's basically about sporting clubs. And that's the thing in common. So if you had read that, that would say sporting clubs, not those other clubs that are mentioned on the list. But just let's start with the sporting clubs and get that little bit of equity into that. I like Councillor Hallett's word accountable. They need to be a bit accountable, yes. And I prefer it to be non-judgmental, so you sweep your courts beautifully, so you can have peppercorn rent, but you don't sweep very nicely, you can't. Not that sort of thing. It's got to be done properly and sorted out with a basis on how it's going to work, and I'm sure the administration will do that in a fair and equitable way, and I look forward to their report. So I'm hoping you'll vote for this report, please. Thank you.
All those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, now we need to, it's 10:25, we need to move for an extension of time or make a decision to defer the last item to the next meeting. I need some direction from you.
Got my thing on.
Councillor Davey.
I move for an extension of time for 15 minutes to consider the last item on the agenda.
Councillor Cornish.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay. All right. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So,
Thank you. I'll get on with it. Stobie Pole Art in Community Program, and more broadly, I've moved this motion because there is some confusion and concern in my community about the quality and quantity of Stobie Pole art that's being placed in the streetscapes. And this is largely, as we heard tonight, in Beulah Park. There's some that has gone into Kensington Park. I think we're the predominant focus of it in Burnside. And there's also a great deal of confusion about the process of administration of this painting work and how it's done. South Australian Power Networks have a program which encourages art designs painted on their infrastructure, which is their Stobie poles. And this needs several requirements to be facilitated by council because it's council's land on which the infrastructure is situated. SA Power Networks require the local council's approval. The painting should not be higher than 2 metres from ground level. Artists should consult with residents adjacent to the proposed Stobie Pole site and get their approval to paint. The painter is responsible for ongoing maintenance of the artwork, and it's recommended that anti-graffiti coating is used. It's all a fairly expensive process. They also recommend some safety features. So it's usually children who are doing this artwork, and I think therefore council steps in to manage it and maintain it. Burnside's also chosen to require artists to paint on particle board, which is then glued onto the pole. This is also very difficult for children to manage. There was a grant provided 2 years ago for local students to paint several power poles, but this has blown out to approximately 50 across the Beulah Park area. I was on the selection panel for this grant, but it wasn't obvious to me at the time that it was such an extensive grant. I had no idea there were over 60 paintings to go up, or that they were all on weatherproof panels. So as we've heard tonight from a local resident, there is a need to streamline our approach to this type of art, because we now have a public art policy, which this seems to sit outside and does not comply with. So we need to, I think, streamline our approach to this, link it to our public art policy, and work out how its implementation is to be. Well, we just need an implementation strategy to be included in the public art implementation strategy with, as we've heard tonight, community involvement and consultation, as these are being placed into local streetscapes with people not having any say in what's going up. I'm not sure who made the policy decision to paint on the weatherboard and what the process is for removal when these are deteriorate in the weather, but council needs to make provision for this, as it may be a resource-intensive process to maintain or remove them as they deteriorate. So, as we've heard, the quality is variable. That's the reason for my asking for a report that pulls it all together, clearly clarifies what our position is, how this sits with our public art policy, how we liaise with SA Power Networks, and how we consult with our community. So hopefully you'll support this tonight.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Wilkins, you're seconding. Do you wish to speak now?
Perhaps not. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Jennings.
I'm a big fan of Stobie Pole art, but it has to be done well. Kids are so enthusiastic and fun, and they've got really, really clever but unthought through ideas. If you're going to do something like that's going to potentially be there for 50 years, it has to be done well. So.
62.
Councillor Cornish.
Put them out the front of my house.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, happy to support seeking a report on it. It does seem a little fair that the inequity of the location seem to be heavily around Beulah Park. I do recognise that. I've got a different point of view with the quality of art. Art's in the eye of the beholder. And seriously, a 4-year-old could see some of these ones that someone says is ugly and think it's the most amazing piece of art, and really encourages them to become an artist. So I understand there's a quality thing there for some people, but for me, art is in the eye of the beholder, and I'm not going to judge who that beholder is, and I don't want to take that role on either, because I don't want to put my skewed biases onto someone else who might think something's beautiful. Look, I will support seeking a motion in a report into it. I do think it's a bit unfair that it's all in one particular area, that's for sure.
Can I just ask the mover, the CEO has just asked me for more time, that October is too soon for such a report. So are you looking for another month?
If that's okay.
So if we can make it November instead of October, so if we could change that motion accordingly. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Jones is there first.
It's too late at night to be making important decisions like this, so I think we should vote no and think about it another time.
Councillor Wilkins.
I've just got on my phone a piece of Stobie pole art that I saw in Kingston in the southeast, and it's simply at Christmas time they have these panels on their Stobie poles. I'll show it to the CEO, forward it to him. At Christmas time, it's their logo, etc., promoting the Kingston in the southeast. Simple as, and it's quite sharp and interesting.
I do recommend, for those who don't understand or don't know anything about the project, that they read last winter's edition of the Focus magazine. There's a full page there that explains how the process arose. And then I would just like to ask a question. I am aware of our deputy's objection to the art and the fact that he ran a section 270. I am interested to know from the administration of any other objections to this artwork by any other members of the community.
Through you, Madam Mayor, in relation to this particular art in Kensington Gardens, Mr Green was the only complainant. We did, on the other hand, have some support through the former Premier for the same work. In relation to Stobie poles generally, we only have one other complaint on file, but that was not in this ward, or not in that suburb rather, it was in Leabrook. So total 2, but only one in relation to this particular program.
Right. Thank you for that. You got a question now?
I've forgotten what I was going to say.
Because you've made a comment.
Yes. Forget it. I can't remember.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the matter before I put the motion? Sorry? Sorry, before I go back to Councillor Davey. Right, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for your input. There's just so many questions to be answered. I think a report is a good way to pull all of this together and to address all of those issues, community consultation, quality of the art, how it fits in with our public art policy, how it's being applied, and could it be more equitable across Burnside, and what other examples are there, as Councillor Wilkins has said, that we might be able to apply. So I'm happy to allow, to have extra time for the administration to do that. So hopefully you'll support this. Thanks.
Those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost. Thank you. And I will close the meeting at 10:30. Actually, I just want to say something really quickly before I close the meeting. I had a phone call from the Governor today, and it relates to community grants. We supported as a council 2 Burnside resident young people to go on Operation Flinders. Yes. And the Governor is the patron of Operation Flinders, and she went on up to the Flinders 2 weeks ago, met the 2 young people, met all of the young people who were on that particular trip, and rang me to commend this council for supporting such an intent to support the students financially. And so I was able to talk to her about the fact that it's not the first year we've done it. We also helped the Rotary Club with the one and all students going on those trips as well. So I wanted to publicly pass on her thanks as patron of the Operation Flinders. Over 450 young people a year do that, and they've been working for over 30 years it's been operating in South Australia. It was started by a policeman, and there is a policewoman there who apparently has been giving up 2 weeks of her holidays every year for the last 20-something years to help run Operation Flinders program to support young people who are having difficulties in their lives. So I just wanted to report that conversation to everybody tonight. Thank you.